There's no job like your first job. Find out how the brightest minds in HR, talent, and recruiting got their start. This is My First Job, hosted by Mike Wood, only on the Purple Acorn Network.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of My First Job on the Purple Acorn Network. My name is Mike Wood. I am your host with the most, and I am thrilled today because I finally have gotten Steve McGrath on the podcast to join us and tell us about his crazy, humble origins. Steve, do you want to say hello and introduce yourself to the guests?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. My name is Stephen McGrath. I'm the product experience manager at Poetry. I think I'm in the wrong place because it said brightest minds in HR tech and recruitment.
No, it should just say minds, not brightest.
Yeah, definitely shouldn't say brightest if my face is going to appear anywhere near that. So, but no, it's a pleasure to be here, Mike.
So I've known Steve for a couple years now, and I tend to see you at industry events, and you are usually wearing a Scottish uniform, which is the kilt and everything.
Yeah.
The real question is there anything under the kilt?
Right to it. That's no, not, there is not. I literally just packed it without any of those garments in question needed for my bag. So absolutely, I'm going to an event tomorrow, so I will be wearing the kilt there. Yes.
Oh, great! Woohoo! All right. So here's a question that I ask everybody, which is the whole base of the show. What was your first job?
Yeah. So my first job, I had to actually think about this because I've had so many like little jobs that were all over the place. My first job was actually cleaning. My first proper job was cleaning. I cleaned a hotel kind of resort in a small town in Scotland, and I also cleaned my auntie's kind of what would be an Airbnb now, but was just a holiday cottage then. And I was 13 at that time. So I was 13 when I started working. So I wasn't, well into full time work and being used as child slave labor by any means. But it was a bit of pocket money. So it was, I think, Thursday night, Saturday, Sunday type thing. And then that lasted about a year or so, and then quickly moved on from there.
Now, I mean, you're not the first person to jump on the show and say that they were working at around 13, 14. I think when I was a kid, it was like you have to be 15 to work, but everybody gets around that. Everybody works some sort of job for family or whatever.
Yeah, it also depends how people want to pay you. So, and I think it was quite easy to get, labour, particularly local labour where I lived, that was just under a certain age, as long as they worked under a number of hours per week. So it actually progressed really. I ended up having like 3 or 4 jobs at one time when I was like 15, because it meant that I could earn as much money as possible, but I was still sticking to limits of having, under 20 hours or whatever it might be. So I was, yeah.
I remember, back in my, high school days or, when I was around that age, and you just have so much energy. And I have no energy right now to do anything. But back then it was like you go to school at one point I was going to school from 7 to 2. And then I would go work part-time at a part-time job, picking up golf balls at a driving range. And it's just like, that sounds like a horrible existence. But back then it was just like, oh, that was just life.
I drive past. So shortly after those kind of roles, I ended up working in a cafe washing dishes. But it was about 3.5 miles from my house, and I would cycle there and cycle back. And then I started working at a dog kennels, which was 3.5 miles in the other direction, but also had a giant hill. And I used to be like 15, 16 and think, I'm going to conquer that hill today in record time. And now I get out of breath just driving past it. I was like, what is that? Why would I do
and
that?
That hill's laughing at you. Every time you drive by, it's just laughing at you. You're never going to conquer me.
Yeah. So it was one of those things. You're right, unlimited energy that you could do lots and lots of different things. But I just I didn't have really the ability to stay still when I was younger, which will come as no surprise to you, Mike, when
Yeah.
as you have been around me in real life. It just was trying to find my way to do a whole bunch of different stuff, and earning money was my favorite thing to do, I guess, probably.
Yeah, I also like earning money, but back then you don't earn a lot of money.
No, absolutely
I
not.
think I got $7 US. No, it was 5 when I first started. I got $5. It was the actual minimum that they were legally required to pay me is what I
Yeah,
got.
yeah, yeah. Mine would have been very. It was like £3.20 an hour or something for quite a lot of the different little bits and pieces that I
Oh,
had.
so you guys have currency up there. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
thought
yeah,
you might get
yeah.
a sheep for the
We
month.
traded we traded haggis. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well done for cleaning today. There's five
Yeah,
haggis.
exactly. Now, have you had haggis? Is that
Oh,
something that people
absolutely.
actually eat up there?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I love
'Cause I've seen
haggis.
it referenced in I think it's just a bunch of meat cooked within a sheep's stomach or something like that.
Absolutely. So it's pretty much everything inside, put bound together with oats, and put inside the stomach. So, look, don't knock it till you've tried it. Right?
Yeah. Well,
There's
I don't know if have you ever had beef cheek? Like, I don't sit around being like, I could really, like, go for, like, the
yes,
cheek
some beef cheek.
of a cow,
You
but
know,
the beef cheek is really good, and I had
yeah,
that once.
it's like everything. If it's cooked properly and cooked well and comes with good stuff, then you're pretty much on to a winner. I wouldn't recommend that you get your haggis out of a can, for example.
No. Oh,
You
god.
should probably go to a restaurant and try it if you're going to, preferably in Scotland.
Awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about how you got to where you are now. So, did you go to university, and what were your like? How did you get on your current path?
Yeah, so I barely finished. Well, I didn't finish high school, and I decided at quite a young age, when I was 16 years old, that I was going to move to Canada by myself. So I left my family, my mum and dad, and my sisters, and flew over to Canada with the intention of coming back at some point, in a couple of months, and ended up basically staying there on and off for 4 years. For the majority of 4 years, I was in and around the Toronto area. I did a couple of different jobs there, all manual labour, so hot tub kind of mechanic. Worked with paving and stuff like that. Did a bit of painting and decorating, a whole bunch of different stuff. And then when I was 19, just before my 20th birthday, the company that I was with, which is Arctic Spas, a hot tub company in Canada, applied to have a sponsored visa for me, which the Canadian government rejected. Surprise, surprise. A guy with no qualifications that is doing a manual labour job. That wasn't ever going to go very well. So I arrived back in Scotland just before my 20th birthday with no qualifications, being used to earning quite good money, but essentially having to start all over again. And that is when I found my first recruitment job. So, like everybody else in the industry that you speak to, I think that's probably changed a little bit now, but, certainly anybody that's 10, 15, 20 years in the game fell into it. And I was one of those people that fell into it. So, started right from the bottom, sourcer in a recruitment agency, and then started to work my way up from there.
And so, Sorcerer and Recruitment Agency, this is probably like the early 2000s, or at least
2009. 2009.
okay. So, I mean, you're like a hardcore sourcing. You're digging through a lot of different like
Yeah,
tell me what the sourcing was like back then for any of
yeah.
our younger audience.
So it would be essentially going to the cupboards to get our paper files on candidates that were all matched into different job areas, filing through them to see if anybody matched the job. Job boards were an expensive commodity at that time, so we really only had one or two. But I used to do something which I learned pretty early on, which I used to start at the end of the job board and work my way back to the most recent. So quite a lot of people that were sitting around me would always go for the people that were recently available and ready, and they would struggle to keep that candidate, warm because they had so many options and things that were happening. I tended to try and start right at the end, thinking if somebody had been looking for a job for 6 months, the chances are that they would be grateful to go in on a Monday morning was pretty high. So I, you know, it was kind of low level construction and oil and gas work that I was trying to source for. So there wasn't a huge amount of kind of specialists or specialisms needed. It was just who could show up and who's going to keep showing up. Basically, that was my kind of go to. The one thing that we did do then, which made a little bit of an interesting flavour, was having to meet every candidate that you're putting forward for a job, which is not what we try to differentiate ourselves from other agencies, that we would sit down for at least an hour with everybody face to face and interview them properly. Now, I was a 19-year-old guy with no qualifications, asking people what made them qualified to set foot in a construction site or an engineering site. So I don't know how great that kind of that process would have been, but we did it, and it worked
Yeah,
nonetheless.
if only the candidates had known that
Oh,
there's just
absolutely.
some random guy off the street.
Yeah. But literally was wearing shorts and t-shirt in Canada 5 weeks ago, filling up somebody's hot tub and balancing the chemicals. And then I'm there asking you what makes you qualified to go into an oil and gas company.
Well, joke's on you,
Yeah.
candidates, if you remember this guy from from a long time ago. But
Yeah.
I love that. So, like, you're starting at the people that are more likely to accept an offer from you, because they're the people that are more desperate. They don't have as many options, and it's sad to think of, but it's smart, and that you're
Yeah.
that call that is going to give them an opportunity when they've been sitting around for 6 months. I mean, we see it now with all the tech that we have now, that people are still sitting around for 6 months
Absolutely.
trying to find job. And it's now, instead of like lining up on the job boards, they're lining up on LinkedIn, and
Yes.
they're just lost in the ether of all the millions of applications on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's like that. I mean, the modern day version of that would be the open to work banner, and
Yeah.
the first people I would have called would be every green banner, just to make sure that they're where they're at, and ask them what they're doing. So yeah, no, definitely it was try and start at the end and work my way back. In theory, it works. If you get somebody at the end, great. If not, the more recent people should hopefully be available by the time you get there. I also, a bit kind of anecdotally here, I also just really like the human element to recruitment and trying to bring a bit of humanity into it. So, giving somebody an opportunity that maybe was sitting waiting for one. I also used to do a thing, and I spoke about this in another podcast, so people might be sick of the story if they've heard it once or twice. But I used to do things where I would try and take people that were like in the position that I would have been in. So 16, 17-year-old, leaving school with no qualifications, applying for any job, and actually phone them and say, hey, just so you know, the successful candidates that are applying for jobs are doing A, B, and C. Do you want me to write your CV for you and I'll try and help you? I've not got anything, but it just gives you a little bit of a step, and it just makes people feel like there's somebody out there that cares, right? So that was the element. I once got rejected from a really high kind of level recruitment agency job because I told the guy that was hiring me that story and the story previously, and he called me too human to work in recruitment.
I've been told. So I was interested. I was going to be reporting for another publication, and the woman who runs it told me that I was too nice
Yes,
to be a reporter. And I'm like, well, you can be critical without being a jerk. Like, you
absolutely.
can be, as long as there's logic behind it. Like, everybody can accept criticism, if as long as there's some logic behind it. But I'm not just going to put people on blast. Like, that's
No.
just, the older I get, the less I want to do that. Unless they deserve it. If they really deserve it, I will put you on blast.
Yeah.
But tell me how you got involved. So you were part of the candidate ID days, right?
Yeah,
So
it was. Yeah. So I kind of flip flopped around different recruitment agencies once I landed in Glasgow, all sticking with engineering and oil and gas pretty much my entire career, up until I got to Adecco, where I worked briefly at the latter part of that for the RPO arm. And while I was seconded to a company there, I got a little bit of a LinkedIn message from Adam Gordon asking how I was doing. if I was, perhaps interested in having a chat. Now, I would like to think that that was the only LinkedIn message that Adam Gordon had sent that day or that week. I guarantee you it was probably part of a
He's
campaign.
working his way through the bottom barrel.
Yeah. He started at the bottom and then going all the way to the top, and I'm just there waving at the bottom, going, "Hello, pick me." So, it ended up being I went to Canada ID, and to be honest with you, and this, sorry to everybody that is still in a recruitment agency or internal or RPO based role, I grabbed it with both hands because it was my ticket out. So I had spent, over a decade going through the ups and downs of recessions and, working for companies that I just didn't feel that fire for, and trying to start desks from scratch, and then being in internal recruitment, which I thought was going to be different, but just had its own challenges and its own ways. And I was kind of like, I've lost the fire for doing this. I'm quite an outgoing guy, but I was just kind of going, slowly down and down. And Adam gave me that opportunity, and I literally, grabbed it with both hands and didn't look back. So I started in Canada Ideas, customer success, and then we got bought by iSIMS. So that went
Yeah.
pretty well.
And that's how I met you, because I was at iSIMS for a little bit, but
Yes.
I think I told you. So I was at WorkHuman, which is a great company. I was that's how I got started in HR tech. I was there for about 7 years, but I was like, I need to leave after like right around that 7th year. I was like, every year's the same. I'm doing the same things over and over again. I'm trying to stretch up and do new things, but they don't want to really promote from within. They just want to bring, people from the outside. So I was like, it's a tough decision, like, because you like a place, and you're just like, you know what, I need to change, and everything works out. So you're now at Poetry, which is the next stop of the Adam Gordon and Steve
Yes.
McGrath trade. So tell me what Poetry is.
Yeah, so Poetry is a hiring enablement platform. We specialize in trying to bring as many solutions into one great workspace that recruiters need for their day to day lives. There is so many recruitment tools out there, which will come as no surprise to anybody listening to this, but all of them seem to focus on candidate experience. And a lot of that kind of application process and all the stuff that you do around that and the analytics behind it, but recruiters are kind of forgotten in the mix. Sure, you want them to have a fairly decent time using the ATS, or the CRM. But what about all the stuff that they didn't sign up to do? So when we think about back when I was that 19-year-old, right, and they're saying, okay, right, cool, you've got a mechanical engineer in Aberdeen that needs 3 to 5 years experience. Look for somebody with this. Right, go and write that job advert. Me write the sorry, I didn't. What, you want me to write the job advert? Yeah. Just go and look at the company's website, reword some stuff, put a few bullet points so you spoke to the manager, and then just post it and see what happens. Okay, but I didn't sign up for the writing of the job advert thing. Like, that wasn't. I thought I was just going to speak to people, and then latterly when I was in GE, I was working with hiring managers, and they were saying, so you got the interview questions for this guy? Mate, I've been here for 2 weeks. I don't know what a wind turbine engineer level 2 does. Like, I don't like, but you want me to interview them? Yeah. Right. Okay, cool. Go on to Google. What's a good question to ask a wind turbine level 2 engineer? Like, it was that kind of thing of going, right, I wasn't prepared for that. Now, I'm at the fortunate position where I grab things and adapt quite quickly. But I think that there's this kind of forgotten element of recruiters are expected to be marketers. They're expected to, have learning in the bag. They're expected to build Boolean strings and do business cases for stuff. And they're expected to be operationally really good across the whole life cycle. But there's nothing really built to do that, right? So there was a gap that Adam had saw in sales enablement technology that we had used at iSIMS to enable the sellers to sell Canned ID. And Poetry was built from that basis. Now we have definitely ridden the wave of AI in that period, and we have bolstered the whole platform with that to try and make a recruiter's life much easier. But it's not necessarily about you know taking a recruiter and making them do less so that they're obsolete. It's about giving you the 2 hours a day back so that you can actually spend time doing the stuff that you probably wanted to do. All that human connection business that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, no, I get it because it's like there's stuff that you have to do every day, and with recruiters, it never ends.
Mhm.
There's constantly, it's you're being judged on time to fill, so you can't rest at any moment.
Yeah.
There's always candidates. You're always just check. You're doing the basics, and you're getting hand tied. Whereas there's actual talking to the candidates and finding the right ones, which
Yes.
is what why you signed up in the first place.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah. I,
it's
I show a
so
slide deck when we go into customers. I show a slide deck that basically has the reasons I thought I was getting into recruitment, and then it was basically like to talk to people, to negotiate things, and to get people jobs. And then it's like what I ended up doing. And it's essentially 50 different words that are from a recruitment matrix. And it's all, I didn't sign up for quite a lot of that. Now, you can enjoy the process of doing it, but most people get in it for the human element.
Yeah, it's like so I got my start in a PR agency, and I was like I came out of grad school, and so I first went to grad school because the economy was tanked back then. Um, and in the US, you could stay on your parents' health insurance if you were in school. So I was like, put me in school.
Yeah.
So I come out of school and I'm like, all right, I did the extra school. I now have a master's. This is amazing. I'm like, everybody's going to want to hire me. And I remember I started this PR agency, and it's like, hey, Mike, we're so glad you joined. We need these binders made. Can you do a lot
Yeah.
of photocopies? And I was just like,
Yeah.
okay, everybody starts at the bottom, but there's so much crap that I have to do. Whereas like I'm not able to think. Like
Yes.
I'm just process. And so when I'm able to think, I can find ways to do that stuff easier. Or I can find, I have like different like epiphanies and stuff. But like if I'm just stuck at the copier making a million
Absolutely.
binders,
Yeah. No, that's a great
I,
analogy. Like that genuinely is a really great analogy. So it is that kind of way of just trying to free up time to make you, focus on the stuff that matters. And I know that I said that we are infused with AI, but we really try hard not to lose that individual creativity that makes people great, right? And I think that is, you can structure things with brand guidelines and company guidelines, but ultimately you need to be able to add a bit of flair. Anybody that has ever seen me on LinkedIn will see that I post very different content to the usual stuff that happens
you're
on there.
you're not afraid of like putting a video of you singing in the shower or
Oh,
who knows? I mean,
yeah,
I stopped. I unsubscribed once I saw that video.
yeah. Bye, bye, bye. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
but
actually
that's
just on you go. Yeah,
no. I was just saying. I just love that you're a former recruiter yourself. You're trying to help recruiters out there. You understand the issues that they're dealing with, and you come from a humble background, and you're like a good person at your heart. And so, like that,
well, thank you.
hopefully, that well, from the brief times that I've met you, you haven't made a bad impression on me. So, but we are coming up on time a little bit. So I want people to know where they can find you and poetry and any videos in the shower or anything like that. Do you have an
Yes,
OnlyFans
yeah. So
page?
OnlyFans, don't. No, I'm just kidding. The videos in the shower are all on LinkedIn. So if you want to
I
find
can't
me, just
imagine
go
what
there.
the Scottish OnlyFans looks like.
Yeah, it's just me with a kilt standing next to a sheep.
And a
So
bunch of
yeah, no.
really, really white, redheaded women that don't see the sun a lot. Yeah.
Hey, it's been beautiful today. It's very sunny. That's why I've got this fantastic shirt on.
Awesome.
So yeah, look, I'm really, to be honest with you, I'm only on LinkedIn. It's the only social media that I have, which is probably partly why it's an outlet as well. So Stephen McGrath on LinkedIn. Poetry you will find on LinkedIn, or go to poetryhr.com. You'll be able to find that. Or Adam Gordon posts roughly about 17 things a day in terms of hiring enablement. So he's a good source too.
Awesome. So everybody check out poetry online. Check out Steve McGrath online. And I will check you out in person at RecFest this year. I believe you're going to be going back there
Yes, I will be. Yes.
in Nashville. So
And
we'll be back
Nashville.
in Nashville.
Yeah.
I have a cheers with your name on it.
Yeah,
But
perfect, man.
Steve, thank you very much for joining me. I know it's late where you are right now, so thanks for staying up. I know you probably go to bed at like 8 o'clock, and you're
It's never too late for you, Mike. Anytime.
all right. Well, thank you very